Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. I have an opportunity today to work on an Okuma. It's branded for Shields Outfitters. It's a 15 line counter LC, gear ratio of 5.1 to 1, made for a store brand, but it's definitely an Okuma reel. We're going to show you how to take this reel apart, how to service it, how to keep it fishing for a long time to come. So we're going to start by taking off the business side of the reel, the handle side. And one of the things I want to do is encourage you to subscribe to my channel as I remove these pieces and parts. Well, you wondered why I'm getting this micro screwdriver out. And one of the things that's easy to overlook is this small screw in the back side here that you want to remove before you can take the rest of the reel apart. And actually, I'm thinking maybe that doesn't even come off. Let's leave that for a moment. The line counter itself is generally part of that side plate, so that's what I'm thinking here. We're going to take the handle off. Let's start there. And while I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like the art of reel repair and service. And if you do subscribe, use that notification button. That'll let you know when I'm posting videos. And if you're interested in a particular reel of the day, today it's the line counting reel that's generally used for drop fishing or trolling. You want to know the depth, or you want to know the distance that the fish are away from where you are, so that you can know the zone in the water column, and you can go right back there again after you get that first bite. We've removed the handle, the tension washer, and the star adjuster, and now we can adjust these 4 screws and see if the rest of the unit comes out. As I mentioned, I pulled that little micro driver out because a lot of times they hide that screw there, and that has a roll in the holding the side plate on. Sometimes it doesn't. So I guess when you don't know the reel, I'm kind of doing this on kind of general knowledge as opposed to having worked on this one specifically. I am curious because, well, this one doesn't have bridge screws on it, which says that the bridge is most likely screwed in from the internal side. And, that was something that Daiwa did a lot of, like on their Sea-Line slosh reels, 50SH. But that isn't necessarily always the case. Well, yeah, we can remove this. Just have one long screw here that I haven't taken out completely. So you didn't need to take that back one off. Lessons learned. This one's a different thread too. You want to note when you take these off. Wow, that is a long one. You want to note if there is a different thread where it belongs. In this case, this is a threaded one which goes through the line guide bar up top. The other 3 are a coarser thread. And I'm still trying to get that one out. Wow, this one must be a mile long. Okay, I think I feel it coming out now. All right, I'm going to leave that one right in that post for a moment. Now I pop it out, and yeah, we got a long screw there. So note that the long screw belongs under the free spool arm. We come underneath, then we have our spool assembly. Just checking to see, it doesn't appear that there's any ball bearings in the spool. You would assume then they're going to have some ball bearings in the case. We're going to need to address that. When you take it off, examine the pieces, make sure that everything looks good. And by that, this is the click ring, so you want to make sure that the click ring looks good. This is the worm drive. You want to check to make sure that there are no pieces or dirt or anything else fouling that drive. And then, we can set that aside for a moment. There's a bushing on the back here, not a bearing. And, sometimes I get asked about that. You know, do I need a ball bearing reel that has 40 ball bearings? No, you don't. And a lot of times, most of these reels, you can get by, if it's a conventional reel like this one, get by with a ball bearing on the main gear. And you'd like to see one on each side of the spool because that's going to help the casting. But you don't, if you don't have that bearing there, a bushing sometimes is fine. All right, there's a plastic gear in there you don't need to do anything about other than make sure it's clean, and it is. I'm putting oil on it, not grease, and that's going to grease the side of the line gear, line worm gear. I'm going to remove the pole at this point in time. remove the pole cap. This houses the pole, so just gently tap down, and most of the time you can free the pole that way. If not, just kind of work it back and forth. It'll generally pop out of the track as it's riding along. And this one's just being a little stubborn, but we will get it out. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to float some penetrating oil in there. Just let that sit for a minute. Put that off to the side. We'll come back to that. All right, let's have a look at what's going on in the gear side. When I pull these pieces and parts off, I put them into a parts tray so that I know where they are. And when it comes time to reassembly, I know where to go for them. This has the basic assembly of a Shakespeare Tidewater or any other Okuma that's out there. A little bit of difference in terms of how the spring is, but not terribly. And we'll show you how to service this now. First thing I like to do is just pull that spring off of that post, because that spring tends to flop around and get lost. So just release the tension on that before you do too much more. You want to notice here that we have 3 different screws, and on this one we have a washer that's holding that main gear in place. So we're going to remove the 3. The flat screw goes to the right side. There's a smaller screw, usually holding an anti-reverse dog in there. It is holding an anti-reverse dog in there without a spring. All right, well, that's kind of interesting. And one in the main bridge. So I don't know what happened here with that anti-reverse, but there may be, well, I'm guessing there may be an anti-reverse, instant anti-reverse clutch on this one. Let's see what we got in here. Okay, this is your 3rd one. That goes in the center. The spring just simply came off that. That's what happened there. All right. Sometimes you have to be a little bit of a Sherlock Holmes here to figure out what's going on with the reel. Somehow that came off. All right. The ones that have the ring, the washers on it, are the center, right side, left side. So I will put them into my parts tray just that way. Now we should be able to remove the backing plate. Here's what I meant by that. Oh, okay. So this is going upside down. That's all right. I was looking at this here, which happens to be the drive for that line counter. All right. Nope, no big deal. I'm going to take the jack off next. That's held on by a small Phillips head screwdriver here. That just fell in the case. We'll get that out. Make sure when you do that that the spring comes out with that. Keep those attached. Next up then is your yoke and pinion gear. 2 springs that go on top of that, actually go under that yoke. This is the anti-reverse dog. I usually just leave that in the case. Pull the main gear out. Take a picture here because, well, if any of those springs go flying in the night, you want to know where they go back to. If you have it apart and you're wondering, that's kind of the setup inside in the case. And do nothing with the line counter. All right, well, there's what I thought was an instant anti-reverse. It's just a big old plastic collar. I imagine some of these models may have an instant anti-reverse on it. 2 shim washers under the gear sleeve collar. And 2 tension washers. This is a good place to take the pictures so you know the sequence as it goes back in. Sometimes if maybe you're in the military or the airline industry or automotive industry, they tell you kind of line up your parts the way you took them off in sequence. You could do that. And we want to find something where we can get this washer off on these gears. These washers seem to be a little glued together with old grease. That's okay. Should be able to push down on this now. I guess they're going to be stubborn. So you can see that this reel has not been serviced in a while. We have sticking drag washers that are stuck to the metals. They appear to be felt. And well, if they stick to the metals, you're not going to have much luck in maintaining a nice smooth drag. Okay, there we go. I was trying to push that out because of the way that this is stuck. We finally got it. And with a little room now, should be able to push the metal piece through. Boy, those really are particularly stuck. There we go. Same idea here. You can see this is a reason why you want these serviced, because these are pancaked now. I'm going to need to use I use a razor knife as a wedge to break the seal. You saw me do that on the first one. I don't want to rip this up. I want to reuse these drag washers. You can reuse them. They just need to be relubed. Same thing on the one on the bottom here. These are pressed in, pressed on, and well, ineffective in its current state. Okay, I'm going to get that old grease out of the cavity here. Now, these are felt washers. So felt washers you can oil or you can grease. I prefer oil. Oil will dry, but it won't glue. These were greased, and they tend to, when the grease dries, it tends to become a glue. And well, you saw what happened there. They kind of really got trapped badly. And well, so much for keeping that working the way it should. We put the main gear back on. And now I'm going to use my fishing reel oils instead. And I'm really going to soak these. These are very porous. They will absorb the oil just like a sponge. And that's what you need to do in order for these things to work properly. You saw me lubricate the one side. You can't over oil these, so we're going to take the side with the oil and put that face down. I already see it seeping through here, which is wonderful. And just a dot or two this time on the side. You want to make sure that those washers that had all that dried grease on it are clean. So go ahead and take a paper towel. Make sure that you can clean those up. You don't want them sticking right back down again. Again, you'll have an ineffective drag. Put that in, push that down. And I just noticed I made an error. That first one is not the one that belongs there. There's an arbor side, so you need a bigger hole to cover that arbor. No harm, no foul. And now we got the two smaller hole ones. That's the advantages of taking a picture. Well, that one's totally soaked now, which is wonderful. That's the way it should be. Find the washer with the points. That's an eared washer. These are turned down. The one that's turned down faces down. Line them up in the slots of your reel. Now you can see some of that oil coming through. And that's not a problem with the drag washers. Again, these have soaked. You can see it's come right through the top now, so I don't even need to add a little extra on the top of that. I'm going to go ahead and put the core washer on. It looks like I'm transferring some grease off my glove onto here. So a little bit of house cleaning there. Then we have the two tension washers. And we have that plastic assembly with the collar inside. And that is your main gear assembly. before you can put the main gear back in, you got to go put the pinion gear assembly in. Pinion gear assembly is a yoke and the pinion gear. On the pinion gear, you're going to find two ramps. They go to the back, as well as the pinion gear faces the spool. So in this case, because of the way that this is mounted, the slotted side faces out. Sometimes when you're working on a bait caster, the slotted side will face in. That's not the case with this one. Okay, this is always fun. I really don't like this reel too much. You can see how this reel is set up for an instant anti-reverse. It's got the grooves inside here where the instant anti-reverse collar would grab. This one does not have that. It has the more traditional old style dog. Okay, the two springs go on next. It's kind of reverse thinking here. Usually those springs go on the top. And it's the same thing here. I did this backwards as well. You want the ramps facing out because the jack will be coming towards you. That goes down. Now we want to seat the main gear. I'm going to just hold light tension on that so I can seat this main gear. And then we want to seat the anti-reverse dog. Now this has a kind of a pivot collar on it. You can see that brass piece there. That's going to sit over the stud on this side. And then if you took that spring off before, that spring is going to attach to the post down here. This is always fun because you got a lot of moving parts and a kind of a roving main gear here. So you got to kind of work with this when you go to set that main plate in. One of my least favorite of the activities there. Next up, I want to take this jack and try and set that screw over the post, spring over the post. No, we'll get that later. And we want to get that small screw to go in place there. That's your free spool release jack. So this back ratchet on this reel serves two purposes. The one side is going to click off and reset the free spool. There's an automatic trip. And the other side is going to grab it as an anti-reverse dog. So what I'm doing here is grabbing this loop of the spring to set that over the post so that you have tension on the anti-reverse. So that's the way that spring sets. Screw, we're up. Now we want to continue by pushing this main gear up, kind of steadying that out. We want to get the anti-reverse dog down low. Again, not necessarily the easiest thing to do. I don't really like this reel, but I understand the design of this reel. Now we can grab that plate. And you want to notice on this main gear that there are two flat sides to it. Just kick that off with the... There's two flat sides on this post here where this is going to go down. Let's go. And I got two of them pretty well set here. this over for the main gear. And I want to set the top one on this. We always said the big screw goes to the right hand side, and that's always a good one to start with. Wrong screw. Okay, now you can pretty much loosen up a little bit. This is your anti-reverse dog. Okay, we have the washer, big screw. That'll hold the main gear on, and then that'll pretty much take most of the worry about this away. We should have one more screw in our basket here for the anti-reverse. And we can tighten that one down. And then we can just kind of relax for a minute, right? We should have a wheel that's turning now. Drop that into gear. Check your anti-reverse, it's working. We're in pretty good shape at the moment. Okay, I like to, at this point, put this star adjuster back on to hold this whole assembly in place. And then I don't put the handle on quite yet. Okay, before we finish this, let's put a little bit of grease onto the metal drive here. And the stud where it's going to sit in that bushing. Bring the spool through. Make sure you don't trap the line. There's a good chance that line will trap because it's old line. So grab the tag end of that line as you go to reassemble. Okay, I like to start with that threaded screw because, well, it's the only one that's different, so let's get that one in there. And I guess I neglected, I did take a break here, and I neglected to film putting the pole back on. And I apologize to those of you that have been waiting here to see that. Essentially, I was able to tap that pole out, as I was demonstrating before, a light tap after that penetrating oil had worked its way around to help lubricate that. And with that tap, pole came out. It was clean. Just put a drop of oil back into the carrier and reinstalled the cap. So that's how you do that, for those of you that may have been holding on for how to service that pole on the line guide. Well, this is a very deep screw, that's for sure. We're almost there. And we've got 3 more screws on this side, and we'll install the handle, give it a test, see how we did. So these Okuma reels have a pretty good track record in terms of performance. As I mentioned, I don't know what happened, where the exchange was made in technology, but this is the Shakespeare Tidewater, the older Tidewater series internals. And Okuma and Shakespeare are competitors, so somewhere along the line it was okay for them to use that, I assume. Alright, tension washer goes on, handle goes on. And kind of got a call coming in there. Those of you that watch the channel kind of know I encourage you to ask your questions in the forum under the comments section when you're working on reels. I can't answer the phone, and a lot of times it takes me a lot longer than most to respond to those, although I do try. Okay, the cap is back on. The tie down cap nut is back on. Okay, the gloves are off. The reel is all back together again. It's time for a test. Tighten down your drag. Let's go with free spool first. Pull your lever. Make sure that you have the free spooling going. Turn your reel. Make sure that it returns the free spool. When you're in gear with the drag tightened, make sure the drag is holding. You saw what happens when you leave the drag engaged all the time. It'll press down the lubrication on those felt washers. Eventually they will dry out, and if it's grease, it'll act as a clamp to hold them to the metal. So back off your star adjuster after each use. That way you will avoid that issue happening. Give it a good turn. Make sure your line counter is working. Reset your line counter. Do it again. And this reel's ready for return to Kevin to go take fishing again. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. It's an interesting little reel made for Shields Outfitters. It's the Okuma 15 line counter. And, well, this one's a nice reel for tracking the fish in depths and enjoying the time on the water. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for all it is that you do to keep us safe. I truly appreciate your career choice and your day-to-day dedication. To everyone, please stay safe, stay well, stay watching, have a great time on the water, keep those reels fishing. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.